guys all look so beautiful. Wonder how many people are here. I know that they're here. So thank you to Jeff for inviting me to speak here, and thank you to Sensei Shinzan for suggesting coming out. I'm very happy to be here. I had a whole idea about what I was going to talk about, a whole pile of notes. But mostly I want to just share some thoughts with you that feel very alive for me today. This morning I spent a few minutes with some crew on Fox News, and it was the most wonderful thing. These really, so many loving people there. It was so wonderful as an opportunity to just shift. Like many wonderful people. And I would really think very often about what are we practicing for? Are we practicing to become right? Or are we practicing to actually be a benefit to ourselves and the world? And do our thoughts, words, and actions create division and walls, or do they bring reconciliation and healing? And so it was really inspiring morning for me, because I had realized I had all kinds of ideas before I got there. And kind of opinions that I kind of actually was pretty sure I was right. And I realized it was such another wonderful layer of waking up to realize all these subtle and not subtle opinions we have about the world, or groups of people, or organizations, or you're the person sitting next to you right now. We decide we like them or we don't like them. And what's that really about? And to me, the joy of practice is learning how to be free. Not so much to be right. When I started practicing very early when I was about 11. And as a friend of mine says, you were a very odd child. I was trying to teach myself Japanese, and sure that I was ready to become a Zen Buddhist monk. But then this movie Karate Kid came out, which was so thrilling and exciting. The first one, because I'm old. And the idea of having a teacher was so enthralling to me. Because I kind of was doing everything privately and alone. Which turns out it seems that many of us start this path of practice like I did. Reading a book, listening to a podcast, and then realizing, oh right, it means being with other people. And then we have to deal with that. The difficult mirror of being in relationship. So, I was so inspired by the idea of having a teacher that I was sure that I didn't really understand where to meet a Zen person, except my parents used to sit sometimes with this woman, Sherry Chayat, in her attic. But I found there was a karate school at the local strip mall. I grew up in a suburban town in upstate New York. And below the drugstore, you had to kind of go around the back into the basement, was a karate school. And the karate teacher his name was Sensei White. And he was really into Rinzai Zen, which is this very tough. So we used to sit on the floor, on the wood floor, if anyone wants to try this, in Seiza, which is your legs underneath yourself, on the wood floor for 20 minutes. Let me tell you, it's not a party. It's incredibly difficult and incredibly painful. There's moments where sweating and sweating and sweating. And to this day, I remember what he used to shout at us while we were sweating. He said that you will never be free until you learn how to be still. And that is such an ass-kicking instruction to me. Especially when I kind of get into being right, or, well, you don't really understand me. And if, I feel like I see there's so many aspects of my personality to work with where I'm always kind of wiggling around. Or I'm gonna try something, or I'll, maybe blah-de-blah. Right? Anyone else do that? But to me, it was so powerful just to really learn how to sit with pain. And I used to complain to him, most of the people were much older, so I was always, when I was young, I was always like the odd, weird kid in the school. And I'm like, why do we have to sit with the pain? He's like, because life has lots of pain. And how are you gonna deal with it? And I didn't really have a good response to that, or another plan. So I got quite involved in this karate school and quite dedicated to it. Hey. Welcome. That's like a secret corner. But learning again and again how to sit with reality. And I came from a background that was incredibly painful, actually. And so it gave me enormous courage. I grew up in two homes, really. And one of them was full of physical and emotional and sexual violence. And it was the first time I actually learned how to sit in that and to feel actually that my own ground could be a place of safety, which was so amazing to me, so surprising. And in many ways, it was the beginning of how I started to relate to practice itself and learning that I had to find another real teacher. And so I was reading all the time. I was at the karate school, I was reading the beat writers. I don't even know if people read them anymore. I remember someone in ancient times, we used to read people like Jack Kerouac in the oldie-timey days, in the 1850s. And I would just read whatever they would reference, and they were very interested in Buddhism and Zen, and so I was reading T2 Suzuki as a kid and just immersing myself. And then at 17, I discovered that there was this poet, Allen Ginsberg, who I loved, and he was alive and teaching at Naropa Institute. It was now Naropa University, but it was this place you could go and these people who were interested in meditation and poetry and activism. You could go hang out with them. So I did. And I made my way there. And on the first day that I was there, I was got off the bus on Arapahoe Avenue. Anyone ever been to Arapahoe Avenue in Boulder? And down the street, smoking a cigarette, looking so cool, I thought, was this guy, John Digalori, who became my first teacher. And it's amazing. Cool dude. And he looked like this, so I was able to recognize what he was. And I had never seen really someone before who was an American guy, Italian American guy, who had been so involved that he decided to wear it. And yet still, smoking. And I love that kind of aspect of totally dedicated and totally imperfect. And I thought, I can deal with that. In fact, it is inspiring to me. Many people, I think, are drawn to or want their spiritual teacher or a guide to be perfect. And I've yet to meet one. And if someone wants to be perceived as perfect, it's kind of creepy. Because actually, all of us are doing that much of our day, trying to keep it together. And trying to present ourselves in a certain way. And we want other people to relate to us in a certain way. I know I've spent decades trying to do that. Wanting to be liked or not liked or acting like we don't care when we really care. Anyone ever do any of those things? Just one. The rest of you are just cool with living. But that's the heartbreak, that we kind of have this idea that we all wrestle with that. And then we project it onto teachers, right? And so, to me, what was so great about meeting Dinah the first time was just like, it was like out there. I've got stuff. And it was because of that, I felt like I could trust him. And so for many years, I studied with him, and actually, he had a city center. He had a amazing place in upstate New York called Zen Monastery. And it was a city center, which is now in the same building where our center is, which is so interesting. But the more I began to study in this practice, I got curious, where did this come from? And what is this all about? And who brought these teachings here? And I began to think about, how are my thoughts, words, and actions, if I'm saying, because I was really into it. But how was I behaving and thinking as a way of practicing gratitude for all the people who had dedicated their lives to bring these teachings to now? I don't know if that feels really abstract or not. But for me, it doesn't feel abstract. In Zen, lineage of teacher and student is super important. That relationship is one of, in its idealized form of sacred trust, of unconditional love and support. Doesn't mean that it's a party all the time. But the idea is that it's a willingness to really be in relationship together. It takes two. So what I began to do was to reflect on a few things. And so I want to share with you 3 people that inspire me. One is there's this person named Bodhidharma who often, is depicted like this. I always, as a child, I saw pictures of him because I was born on his day. And so October 5th, so we shared this day. So I was like always intrigued about this person. He always looked like an old Jewish man to me. Invoke over time. Which for me is like very affectionate. But the story goes that, it's pretty clear at this point that his teacher was a woman named Prajnatara. And there's a lot of debate whether at first no one thought there were any women in our lineage, and now it's pretty clear that his teacher was a woman named Prajnatara. And after he finished studying with her, she said, well, thanks for 30 years of study with me, and now it's time for you to go and spread the teachings to China. They were in India at the time. And so first of all, that story always blew my mind. And what blew my mind is that Bodhidharma was like, okay. That is so not American, right? Here, the teacher would be like, how do you feel about doing that? And, you want to check in. How's that going? And do you want to? And should we try? And it's all about that, right? Then it was like the teacher was like, okay, so move to and leave everything you know and go to another country. And Bodhidharma was like, okay. And so there are many fun stories about how he sailed to China on a leaf. But essentially, it's pretty clear that he did arrive in Guangzhou. And the emperor at the time heard there was this interesting barbarian a monk who had appeared in the city. And so he invited him into the temple, to the palace, and said, Buddhism was alive and well at this time in China. And the Emperor Wu said to him, well, I've done all this great stuff. I've built temples, I've supported monks and nuns, I'm so great. What kind of merit am I getting? And Bodhidharma said, no merit whatsoever. And as someone, you can imagine, even this happens to all of us, we're all the emperor sometimes, aren't you glad that I washed the floor? Or, or whatever. We want to be recognized, right? We're all that guy. Maybe we'll discover it was an impress, who knows? But we're all that person who wants to be recognized for what we've done. And Bodhidharma, and actually that was a very popular understanding of Buddhism at that time, was, there are still many schools that are interested in merit, right? And so this is one of the main differentiators of Zen Buddhism. Right? What makes Zen is that it's not interested in that. No gain. And no loss. Just do things because you do things. If you want to sweep the floor, just sweep the floor. And of course, the emperor was not quite there yet, and so he got really enraged with Bodhidharma and said, who the hell do you think you are saying this to me? And no one ever get enraged with someone because they didn't give you the answer that you wanted. And Bodhidharma said, I don't know. So many people think he was just being cheeky. people say that now? Cheeky. They used to say that in ancient times. 1850s. I don't even know what's current. Snarky. Sassy. I like sassy. So some people thought that Bodhidharma was being sassy. But really he was talking about the refuge of Buddha, the refuge of taking refuge in our awakened mind. And in an awakened mind, we don't have a fixed identity. We're just here. Things are fresh. I could be anybody. I often talk about, like, sometimes I'm a teacher, sometimes I'm a monk, sometimes I'm like the person who scoops the kitty litter. Like, we're all a million things. I'm the dishwasher sometimes, I'm the janitor sometimes, I'm the compost person sometimes. I'm like really into compost. I don't know if it really works in the city, but I'm into it. So just not knowing that freshness, just to realize, like, wow, I can be many things. So I'm just saying what I feel in this moment, just as I am right now. I have no idea where this is going. And yet I feel connected to what I'm saying and feel so appreciative to be here. I love looking at all your faces. It moves me so much. We're so rarely where we are. It's heartbreaking, actually, how rarely we are where we are. We're distracted, even when we're here. So that's one teaching that's important to me. This freshness. And the second one is learning to be receptive. The second refuge of the Bodhisattva precepts that are so important to Zen practice. It's often thought of as Dharma. But I really believe that we can't learn anything, really, and I'm speaking for myself, if I'm not receptive to learning. To really learning, like, what is this room doing to us right now? What is it? To me, I just learned today that you can get hepatitis from swimming in the ocean here. So my cousin, I was like, I'm excited about swimming tomorrow. She's like, did you get a hepatitis shot? No. Maybe looking at the ocean. Think about that guy who shot all those people at the garlic festival. How heartbreaking that is. Imagine being so caught in your rightness that you will kill for it. And we all have a level of that. How we kill people in our minds. To me, it's like the teaching of receptivity, and it's so painful to learn it. to be receptive to even our own capacity to cause great harm, both to ourselves and our minds and our bodies, treating people like shit, even when we're upset. We all do it, and being receptive to that huge gradient that no one can escape, that we're all responsible. I know I've caused harm. Not intentionally. So that receptivity to me is so challenging. Because for me, I have to be willing to really take on the responsibility of how I'm responsible. Which to me, lately, I find totally exhilarating. I used to for a long time want to be like, well, I'll take care of this area here that none of you in the back can see. It was not a big area. We do that. We say oh, well, I'm not responsible for that. I can't deal with that situation. Anyone ever do that? 2 of you. The rest of you are just totally engaged with the whole world. So freshness, receptivity, and the third is love and connection. To me, it's a wonderful barometer for how your practice is going, your meditation practice. It's really easy to be like, yeah, I meditate. I did that for a long time. I used meditation to be this aggressive, weird thing. Because I thought I was actually sure for about 10 years. Not a long time, so since the dinosaurs, but a long time. That actually I was a better person than most people because I meditate. I wouldn't admit that to anybody, but I kind of really thought it. Because I was spiritual and that I was, dedicated. But I really was using it as another way just to be a disconnected ass. So I just invite you to think about how are you using your practice? Or maybe not really dedicating yourself to the practice. There's no escape from reflection. Except by escaping from reflection. But once we kind of know something a little bit, you can't unknow it. And one of the things that I've learned with working with dying people, there's never a regret around. Well, actually, let's flip that. The biggest regrets are always around how they didn't function and be more loving in their life. Shutting down and waiting for shit is not what people regret. Being afraid and nervous about really doing and really saying how they feel connected to people is not a concern. So how do we courageously learn how to be more loving? To me, I think of what Sensei White would say, that it's impossible to really love until we learn how to be still. I was talking with my teacher this morning about, the qualities of unconditional love can only happen when you're totally there. You have an adamantine quality about that you're just here. Even though none of us are going to be here for that long in this life. It's like, so why hold on? What's so great about hesitation and like kind of doing things, trying? I think all of us have been doing this long enough, trying and hesitating, nervous. So one of the reasons I wrote this book was really just to share some of my thoughts about what it actually means to live a wholehearted life, which does not mean to live a perfect life. It means just giving everything, which includes how we're deeply imperfect. There's this process in Japanese pottery where they actually smash some part of the pot and break it, and then fill those breaks with gold. Because for them, that is the most beautiful. Where we're broken is the exquisiteness of who we are. So to me, learning how to have the courage to share our suffering, share our struggle, is the place of love. So that's way enough talking. So, questions and responses. There are no answers. Yeah.
Thank you. A lot of beautiful things in there. I appreciate it. So love and connection, I'm thinking about recently for me, like I feel like when I'm involved with a person, like a personal person, whatever it is, action, engagement, talking, conversation, I know how I'm going to act. I know myself well enough to know how I'm going to engage with any particular person.
How do you know?
Well, I'm just saying, but then by myself, when I'm all by myself, it's like, well, I could do anything, think anything, which, goes everywhere. I'm thinking, is that correct?
They sound like ideas to me. Sound like ideas I've had about myself. And to me, like, we don't know how it's going to go with another person. My teacher and I were having a row about something this week that we got into it. And if I didn't know how it was going to go, I have total love and respect for her. And we had to talk about something difficult. And that's one of the reasons I love her in her 91st year. But I don't know how it's going to go.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know how it's going to go, but I kind of know how I'm going to react to everything engaged with somebody else.
Unless if you can be really, in my experience, I don't know, you've got your experience, but I don't know how I'm going to be changed by this night. I'm being changed by being with all of you right now. So I'm not going to be the same person who walked in here tonight. And I'm not now. It's not even possible. And so learning to me is learning how to allow that. Because I think we're constantly wrapping ourselves back up in our little package that we're familiar with. I know what I like and what I don't like. Try a different kind of ice cream. It's so interesting. Like there are small things we can do to. I used to think I was not a gym guy. I was sure that that had nothing to do with my life. up until 3.5 years ago when someone dared me. And now, like, I'm a gym crazy person. I'm a trainer, like, I'm like so into it.
And you're staying in the moment as each moment occurs,
It's
deciding how you're going to be. Isn't it kind of easy if you stay in the moment, how you're going to be? I know, I can deal with this any given moment. I kind of know where I'm going next. If it's to the gym or whatever it might be.
You don't know.
Okay, love is such a general term. My quick follow-up question. Love is such a general term. Everybody thinks about it differently. How do you define the word love?
Connection and responsibility, tenderness and intimacy. And, to me, to be able to feel that even while you and I are speaking. It's not about like some romantic love that I'm talking about. I'm just talking about love, offering respect and dignity. I don't think it's a simple thing, but it's so juicy. Yeah.
Regarding slowing down, you may have opinions and notions and stuff, but be receptive. So how do you apply that to the workplace? For example, I'm a doctor at a very busy clinic, and I need to make decisions fast, and I try not to, come in with preconceived notions because that can lead me astray. But within that time period, seeing that patient, I need to make a decision and diagnose and treat. How do you function in that environment for 8-10 hours and slow down, and also be present the whole time? Because given the back we were in agreement, I thought it was very interesting. So I want to learn a better way.
So,
If there's such a thing, be integral.
could people hear? So basically, I might do a terrible job, which I'm open to. So basically the question is like, well, what about at work? Anyone here work? Two. One person has 2 jobs. Not a working group. Come on, people, raise your hands. There you go. Should do a wave. So the question is, how do we really, all of these things are so easy to say, right? But to me, that it takes enormous courage and we need support to really engage how to do it moment to moment. When sometimes I have someone who helps me do some things and they look at my schedule and they're like, oh my God, how do you, like just scrolling through my calendar. And it's very full with a gazillion things. And they said, like, how do you do that? And I said, well, I just stay until I go. And so actually I teach a lot of physicians who actually, I don't know what the average length of time you have, but the average length of time for a physician with a patient in the hospital is 3 minutes. So I try to teach people how to be in 3 minutes. And to me, it's so exciting what you could do in 3 minutes. Like you can be like, hi. And like those people in the back, like, where are they? Hi. Just to see someone does not take long and actually feels good. And so what we have to do is, to me, is take the courage to practice. Yeah, it takes everything, and you can be in the moment by moment. If you're just be in this moment and then be in the next moment. Stay until you go. And it just takes a lifetime. And it takes total willingness and total engagement. And I'd love to talk about what, Uchiyama Roshi, who is this incredible teacher, and he talks about, but don't talk about what's hard, he says, because that just gives yourself an out. He's like, this practice is hard, but don't talk about what's hard. Because then we're like, oh, it's hard, I'm gonna not do that. I never, anyone like ever pick up like a big book. Like a friend of mine wrote a book on altruism that was like this big. But I have yet to open that book. Sorry. But I think it's just like, well, I'm just not gonna do that. But it's better to me, like, to actually say like what you're gonna do and not do, as opposed to like, well, that's hard. So, be like the carp swimming upstream, using every cell of its body to fooling itself through the dragon gate to become a dragon. It doesn't happen by kind of swimming downstream or kind of swimming upstream. It takes everything.
When do you know when to go? When do you, or your time is up type of thing? When do you know I need to bring this connection to my next schedule?
We'll see. You'll know when you know.
And if the other person doesn't want to let go,
I know you don't want to let go,
see, how's that? You just-
and yet I have to go. Thank you. So maybe, yeah.
Can you talk about death and rebirth, but not in the sense of like literal death and rebirth, but like an everyday sense?
So to me, death and rebirth, from the Zen perspective, happen moment by moment, moment by moment. This is actually what we're talking about. That death and rebirth are right now. Someone earlier was asking me like, well, what happens when you die? Like, who knows? There are so many books and so many people will tell you what happens. But absolutely no one, as far as I know, has come back to report. But death and rebirth, we know, and this is actually goes to your question, and it goes to your question. If death and rebirth happen moment by moment, then I have no idea who I am right now. Because I have not been in this moment. I know I've been keep trying to look at you, hiding in the corner. And all those mysterious people back there, but they remain mysterious. But death and rebirth is, allowing that freshness moment by moment. It's so amazing. Because to me, when I can allow that, then I'm actually here, and then all of you are here. But when I'm in my thing, the world becomes very small. When I think I know, or my opinions, or some of us have that thing where like I suck and nobody will, nobody knows the troubles I've seen. Some of us have more of that. And then other of us are like, I'm great and I can do anything. And then these people think those people, they don't understand each other, except they're the same. They're both unrelated to the whole. And both of them, when we get stuck in them, don't allow us to actually function with love and compassion for other people. Because they're just ways of taking ourselves out and making ourselves special, like either special fucked up or special wonderful, which is also good.
So I have this issue with being intolerant of intolerance and being attached to my views about it, and it seems to be growing daily, and I'm very aware of that this reactivity is what I'm working on, what I'm And I apologize to you because I think it was uncomfortable. Maybe I made you uncomfortable. Maybe it was disrespectful of me to confront you with the question as you entered the temple about an hour ago. I asked you, I'm just curious, how did you get on Fox News? Why were you on Fox News? And I'm apologizing because I see that it's my attachment to you about this. I would never have seen this beautiful excerpt on the news if Jeffrey hadn't posted it on Facebook, and I'm really grateful that he did. I'm really grateful that you're here, I'm here, and we're all here.
Thanks to Fox News.
Thanks to Fox News. That's not why I'm here.
Yay, Fox News.
Those people were so happy. Something manifested in that encounter. And I don't know those people because I don't watch Fox News.
Are you separate from those people?
Well, now I'm a little bit more connected to them, thanks to you and to Jeffrey
And you.
and anyway, it's just this reality. I have to be. First of all, I apologize because for making it uncomfortable for you as you.
You're assuming it was uncomfortable for me.
I am.
You need it to be uncomfortable for me. I'm good.
Me too. Thank you.
Yeah, maybe one.
Could you share with us some more lessons that you've learned along the way in working with people who are dying? What are some of the wisdom that they pass on, during the process that you can share with us?
I've been with hundreds of people. There was a woman named, I'll call her Jane, who was a community member, and when she was dying, she had this amazing room in the hospice that doesn't exist anymore in New York. It closed 2 years ago. She died 2 years ago. And she was like this funky artist, hippie, cool, East Village thing. That's a place in New York City. Grungy, she was fantastic. And when she was dying, I just remember that she had lived in this teeny tiny itty bitty East Village apartment, 5-floor walk up. And then she had this hospice room that was so beautiful. And it was like this huge room. And she had one of those apartments where it's like the size of that little area I used to go to. It was shockingly small. People live here? Or it was like a gerbil thing. And I just remember the joy that she said, looking out the windows, looked out at the East River. And the East River is so beautiful. Just like this amazing flow in the midst of the city. She just said, my whole life, I only gave myself a little tiny slice of the river. And I'm just seeing now that I was so stingy with how much I gave myself. And I didn't allow my life to flow. It was so beautiful. She just saw her own tightness and her own rigidity. And it was so surprising because she was like, the funky comedina. She was like this like funky lady who seemed like so out of the box and so out there. And yet it was so interesting. It was such a powerful teaching to me because I wouldn't have thought she would say that. And she said, but there are real places in me that I really dug in. And I'm just now releasing them. So in honor of her, I invite you not to hold on to those. And we kind of all know what those are. So I think we're good. So thank you all so much. It's such a privilege to be with you all, and I believe Jeff has something to say.
Travis, you have to keep.
Bar the doors.
This guy knows me.
That would be great.
You really should move to San Diego.
Yeah.
Just, it's funny. I don't want to make this too personal, but when I was with you 4 years ago, we spoke very little, and I heard you lead one session at this retreat, and it just was one of the most moving experiences I'd ever had. And so I just always carried with me that feeling and that memory, and I'm just really grateful that you brought it here because it's so rare and so beautiful. And to my knowledge, it's the first time in 13 years at the Dharma Bum Temple that anyone has ever said funky cold Medina. So thank you for that as well. I don't plug a lot of stuff unless it's Koshin because it's incredible. So this is his book, Wholehearted, that is now on bookshelves downstairs at Buddha for You. And you can get one. Most of you know we don't open in the evenings, but it is open. It'll be down there if you want to pick up one of his books. I'll continue to share links to get his books. He wrote it, like the whole thing. Right? I mean, all of it. So, Wholehearted, slow down, help out, wake up. Again, I didn't rattle off his bio, but co-founder of the New York Zen Center, Contemplative Care, runs a chaplaincy program, is on the board or something at the University of Arizona Medical Teacher, yes. So just thank you again for being here, for everything you do. And I have a gift, which I thought was kind of fitting for the title of the book, but it's a copy of a Thich Nhat Hanh piece, and it says, stopping, calming, and resting are preconditions for healing. And I say Maggie, take on here. So we have a Bodhi tree outside, and it's a very special journey for us to have that tree. And so this was actually one of the leaves that had fallen from the first fall. So Maggie taped it on here. So this is for you.
Thank you.
So thank you for being here. Thank you all for being here. If you are here at the Dharma Bum Temple for the first time, welcome. We opened 13 years ago to be a bridge to introduce Buddhist practice to the local folks. Those of us who lead, other than when we have wonderful guests, we're not monks, we're not nuns, we're not gurus, we're not masters, we're just practitioners. We do our best to share our understanding of Buddhist teachings with those who show up. So every night, different practices going on, a huge recovery sangha. We feed the homeless every Thursday, 5 o'clock, family sangha. There's always something happening. So thank you all for being here. If your shoes were placed directly in the handicap accessibility access ramp, we moved them into the library. So we didn't sell them even though I thought about it. They've been moved into the library, so don't panic, your shoes are there. Thank you all for being here, and enjoy your swim tomorrow. And please, get the books downstairs.